today we're going to be doing a run with a little bit of a variation. So I thought I would show you some of the hills. It's kind of windy though, so we can see how much we can capture without getting too much caught up in too much wind. But not only that, but I thought I would talk about something. I would clarify a topic that a few of you have been asking me, and that is, why do I hate? Or more specifically, why do I actually use that term? Why do I say hate when I obviously do it so often and I seem to get something out of it and I seem to recommend it to others? Don't I feel the same as other runners? And that actually prompted me to think about how I could do this for not just this, but to explain why I run. But why I run is for the next video. So for this one, first I have to at least give you an idea. Why do I say I hate running? What do I mean when I say I hate running? And you know, not everyone hates running, so that's the important first part. So let's go ahead and Garmin says I should be running a recovery run, which I don't blame Garmin but I'm going to dismiss. I'm not going to follow its instructions. But I will run an easy run. It is important that I run an easy run. So let's go ahead and get started. So, and as we start, I will fill you in on my previous run, and that was just a couple of days ago. It was quite possibly the hardest run I have done this year so far. And I've already done some hard runs. Haven't taken a week off for a long time. Actually though, last week I did take 2 of my running sessions off. I only ran once instead of 3 times. But that one run was a 15-mile run. And once again, it was near the very top of the hardest runs that I've ever done. So the last 2 runs have just been absolute murder. That's why that's part of the reason that I decided that I was going to do this talk. So for part 1, the simple part, just define what is hate. You can look it up in a dictionary. Yeah, but if we don't get the definitions down, we won't be able to discuss the point. So, hate is first of all, it's a feeling. This is important, by the way. Hate is a feeling. And it is a feeling that is generally a sign of something that you will wish to avoid. Something which for some reason causes negativity Good idea. Let's take this road here. This is the horse road. It is harder. So, we all kind of know it when we feel it. You know, I hate so-and-so. Well, probably means that you feel quite opposed to somebody. And depending upon the intensity of your hate, you may simply wish to avoid them, or you may wish to destroy them. But hate makes more sense when we contrast it with the other emotion that we also know well. That is love. We can hate things. We can hate people. We can love things. We can love people. This is exactly one of the points that I often make. There are some runners who love running. They'll tell you they love it. I will tell you I hate it. When you love a person, what do? You feel good being around them. You want to be around them more often. You feel better about yourself. Many other things become positive when you are around them. Whereas when you hate someone, it's not simply that you wish to avoid them, but as I said, those other things also come into play. You may feel insecure around them. You may feel bad about it. You may feel less of a person around them. So that's around people. What about things? Well, think about, for some of you, eating broccoli. You may hate eating broccoli, especially the really sulfurous, the natural stuff, the old school broccoli, which, by the way, modern broccoli has had a lot of its stink removed genetically, so it doesn't really apply. But old school broccoli had a lot of sulfur, and so it had a lot of stink. So you may hate it because of all the stink, because it's tough to bite into. That's why I hated it when I was a kid. Bitter taste and tough to chew. So I would avoid broccoli throughout my young life. Whereas Cheetos, that wasn't hard. And that didn't have a bitter taste. So I would not avoid Cheetos. That was fun. I like Cheetos. So the whole point there is that the things we hate, we generally avoid.
Lap 1, 10:51. Heart rate 131. Average pace 10:51.
If you remember, this was all underwater a few weeks ago. Now look at it. Water's gone, but it's still very sandy. Anyway, this now brings us up to point number 2, which is the principle of hedonism. Now, hedonism is just a set of ideas. Probably the oldest is the one many of you know, by the Greek philosopher Epicurus, that just set everything apart into pleasure and pain. We will all instinctively seek to maximize our pleasure and minimize our pain. Now, this is a starting point, by the way. This is a starting point to philosophy. It is not the end. Not even back then was it the end. Because as soon as you think about splitting our actions into pleasure and pain, you realize there's a lot of problems with that, including the problem of heroin. But it's a good starting point, because if we look at things, the principle of hedonism generally seems to fit very well with a lot of the data. Not all of it, but with a lot. For example, do you like to work? Well, most people don't. You know? I mean, even if it's a career you always wanted, there's going to be aspects of it that are just going to make it not pleasurable. So, why do you do it? Well, many reasons. But right now, for our purposes, we'll focus on the fundamental reason, and that is the feeling that you got when you get that money. You want money, right? So you work to make money. Yes, there's many, many more reasons. Every one of these things can branch off into many directions. But we're trying to keep this simple, so let's just keep it to the simplest. So you work to make money. But is money your end game? No. Those pieces of paper with dead presidents don't really do anything for you by themselves. If they stayed in your wallet forever, they wouldn't really be all that useful. Instead, you get your money and you buy nice clothes or a pretty car or a computer. So notice, we can continue to play this game of why do you do this, why do you do this? But at some point, most of our actions do have endpoints. Usually why we just keep them and call them ends. Our endpoints are the things that we do for themselves. So for example, why do you socialize to meet someone? Why do you meet someone? Well, why do you get with somebody? Because to a certain extent, getting with somebody feels good. Being validated by another human being feels good.
Lap 2, 10:09, heart rate 131, average pace 10:51.
Again, let's avoid the complications of bad relationships and the other stuff. Let's just keep it simple. Let's assume everything's ideal. Kind of like in physics when we assumed a spherical cow. Once we understand the simplest case, we can generalize to all the other things. But we socialize because it feels good for us. So that's the end. Yes, it could be a means to another end. Maybe we meet with somebody who can hook us up with drugs. And so suddenly the drugs become the end. I mean, there's many ways. So, but another simple thing is when you make the money, perhaps you use it to buy cheeseburgers and pizza, and cakes and donuts. Me. Why do you buy that? Get pleasure. donuts. Why do we do things? Because they bring pleasure. We avoid some things because they bring pain. At the simplest level, I repeat, this doesn't explain many of the complex things. We can go there. But the whole point though is that so many things can be explained that way. That's not good. When we talk about pain and pleasure, there's one principle of pleasure that is often ignored, and yet, even back in the time of Epicurus, he considered it the highest form of pleasure. Now, I'm going to put the word up here because I always get the word wrong. And since the blood's coursing through my veins, I'm pretty sure I'm going to forget it. But it's something like catastoma, something begins with a K. And the whole point is that what it means is an absence of pain and anxiety. In many ways, it is, in some ways, actually, not in many, in some ways it is similar to the concept of nirvana in Buddhism. That is a state where you are free from anxieties, wants, pains. And he considered that the ultimate pleasure. As a matter of fact, all of the other pleasures were inferior. Whenever you sought pleasure, the highest was that one. So that if you had to choose between contentment and eating a pizza, contentment would be more valuable as a pleasure than eating a pizza. And that's important. I say this because once you consider that deeper pleasure, well, suddenly the principle of hedonism doesn't sound so hedonistic. It's bad. You're trying to achieve a state of balance and contentment. That's great. What does this all have to do with my hate? Oh. This state of contentment is part of it. But I hate something. that is precisely the opposite. It does not bring you contentment. It does not relieve anxieties. Quite the opposite. It causes anxieties. It causes displeasures. Now, I hate running, but not for those reasons. As I've said before, it doesn't really cause me anxiety. Well, some aspects of it do. For example, I've shared that I am irrationally insecure of my performance abilities, so that I do not race people. I avoid races. Even though statistically, I can see that I probably would do pretty good. That's an anxiety. But even that anxiety doesn't make things as bad. Because that's only a temporary anxiety. It's gone once I'm done running. And if I feel it while I'm running, what does it matter? The running itself is wearing down any anxieties that I feel. So I will feel it, feel insecure, won't want to run against others. But unlike your more common anxieties that you feel in the day, it doesn't keep grinding away at me. It goes away. And the challenge of the run itself, kind of like I said, it wears it down. It drops the anxiety by like 50 to 75%. Oh, this is the only reason I don't sometimes like streets, because I gotta stop. But yeah, all these anxieties that I feel while I run, though, are very strongly limited to the run itself. They don't persist. And all the pain of the run itself kind of numbs me to the worst part of the anxiety. So anxieties during runs are not like other anxieties. Nothing like that. One day I'm going to have to face that anxiety, that fear of racing, and run a marathon. Oh, that day is going to be quite terrifying. But even then, whatever anxieties I feel, and I will feel them, as I'm running, I'm pretty sure that they will take over. They will be overtaken by the great feelings of satisfaction that I will feel as I perform. They won't go away completely. Every time I race, I will probably feel them. But my whole point, though, is these anxieties do not destroy me. So that's not why. So that's not a cause of my hatred for running. No. The cause of my hatred is much simpler. And that is just it. As I've said before. But we can come back to it. Running hurts. Hurts a lot. So much so that as much of my
948.
life.
Card rate 139. Average pace 10:03.
Another one. God, stops everywhere. Come on. Come on. Okay, we're gonna start our hill climb. The hardest part of this run. God, another stop. God, there's nothing but stops on this whole damn trail.
Wait.
Yeah, wait. Oh, God. Now you see why I prefer to run river runs. You may be like, well, enjoy your stop. Take a little break. Remember, I actually feel psychological pain when I take a break. I feel like I'm quitting. So it's not physical. Physically, I am relaxing. But sunset is in 10 minutes. Physically, I feel relaxing. Psychologically, I'm feeling worse and worse every second. Okay. You might be like, well, hop, hop, hop. You know how you see some runners, they'll be like hopping at the stop sign. Sometimes I do that. But while I'm holding the camera, if I stop and hop, the camera will bounce more. So, anyway, I deal with it. I know other runners probably wouldn't care. For, like I said, stops would be like a relaxation. We're all a little different. But going back to then hate, well, we understand that hate is a strong feeling of aversion or just whatever it is that you hate. It is a very unpleasant thing. Something very unpleasant that you wish to avoid or even destroy. You might be like, well, what about other runners? They feel pain too. Yeah. Except that when they were young and running, they were talented. Their running talent was such that when they ran, yeah, they would feel pain. And remember, when you're a kid, you're not running 20 miles. No kid runs that. Most kids only run like less than a mile. For the short distances, kids with talent would outrun others. And little by little, being better than others at this running provides just a little bit of positive feedback. Even if nobody in your family recognized you, there's always going to be someone. It might just be yourself. Maybe if nobody recognized you as a better runner, you kind of arrived at that conclusion anyway. Because when you ran, others couldn't catch you. My whole point though is, many of those people who like running already did it pretty good. They were already ahead of the average. Maybe not elite. Maybe they weren't even so amazing when compared to the regular folks, but in their little corner of their lives. For example, you may have somebody who's actually a mediocre runner, but they like it. And Probably when they were kids. They were the fastest ones in their block. But in their case, maybe because all the other runners were absolutely terrible. So even though out in the regular world, out in the wide world, they may not even be special as runners, it doesn't matter. It's your perception. In their little corner when they were children, they were the fastest. Oh, sure, it's a rude awakening when you compete against others and you realize you're not so hot. You're no longer the big fish in a little pond. But your neural pathways that have been getting laid down since you were a child, they're still there. So some of these people, maybe they'll cope by not competing anymore as adults, but at the same time, they'll still keep a positive attitude towards running. They just won't compete. So they'll be like, I like running. But then if you tell them, hey, you're done a 5K, a marathon, they'll be like, not important to me. Or any other kind of rationalization. Now, this doesn't explain everyone, by the way. I just told you. I don't avoid them for that reason. I avoid them because I'm terrified. Look at the bloom. It's pretty. What I'm saying is that in a number of cases, I've spoken to runners. And even the ones who aren't that special, at some point, have had that positive feedback. And that's reinforcement. Compare that to those of us who, when we started running, we were slower than the rest. You know, the kid who is last to be picked because he's slow, because he's a terrible athlete and everything. That was me. Usually, in order to be competitive, I actually would go on the girls' teams. At least there I was competitive. Yeah, I was a terrible athlete. But now I also realize some of that was probably just negative feedback. Yeah. In my own perception of it, it probably wasn't so bad. No, I know I wasn't. But it's the luck of the draw. Children aren't aware of the cumulative effects of feedback over time. Of course not. They're living their real life. Even we are not aware. At this moment, I'm getting feedback. What is it? That I'm running up this hill. It's kicking my ass, but I'm doing it. And that's another thing about this feedback. This feedback isn't just conscious. As a matter of fact, it need not be conscious. When I'm telling you about this feedback that I'm getting on the hill, it's not like I'm like up here registering it. No. It's my muscles that are registering it. And that feedback builds in. Dopamine, endorphin, I don't know. But there's some brain chemicals. The ones that help you learn. I think it is dopamine. That as you do things, your body releases this brain chemical. And that is the positive feedback. Because when that brain chemical is released with that activity, your body's more likely to learn it, lay down further cables. So for me, I have decades of childhood of seeing myself as an awful athlete, as a non-athlete. But now at the same time, I'm laying down all these cables from more than a decade of running up hills, running up that hill. And conquering them. Of course, your childhood memories are simply deeper. And so, maybe you can completely wipe them. Maybe. But if you can't, it's going to be very, very hard.
Lap 6, 10:55. Heart rate 142. Average pace 10:12.
Yep. Well, my time is pretty good. Rationally speaking, my heart feels a bit ashamed. So, I say this because that's why your athletes and good runners, as they grew up, they got a lot of that positive feedback, and it was cumulative. And as it accumulated, it encouraged them. The whole point, though, is in all those cases, these are people who don't hate running because of all that positive feedback that the rest of us, who were lower than average, or at least we felt we were, we never got that. And so all we did was feel pain, the same pain they felt. And we get nothing for our pain. Well, as a matter of fact, if anything, if I ran as a child and I was slow, what did I get for my effort? I got made fun of. I don't want to make it sound like I was totally bullied, because I was a little, but not that bad. But I did feel bad about the fact that I was an awful athlete. Because I was slower. But remember what I just said. I felt like I put my all, and I did. I was below average. But I put in all my effort. And I still did poorly. How would you feel if you put in so much effort and you still lost? Let me move to the other side. Which I should have done back there. Oh, here comes another car. Okay. There we go. But see, that's my saying. So, in those little races with kids, I got none of that feedback. All I did was I put up all this effort only to end up losing and being made fun of. Maybe they weren't always making fun, but they don't need to. Sometimes you are your own worst critic. I knew that I lost, so I got nothing out of it. So I was good. So every time I run, I'm like 1% less likely to want to run. Every run, I do poorly, and I want to run even less. And notice, I just by 1%. Whereas kids who got positive feedback, maybe they wanted to run more by 1%. Well, consider how much of a difference that would make in a year. In a year, you run 50 runs. That kid who gets positive feedback in 1 year is 50% more motivated. Or I don't know if percentage would be the right number, but it would be some value, some number. some scale, because 50% will only max out at 100. Whereas this kid, every year he'll feel, let's just call it 50 points. He'll feel 50 points of more motivation to run, which will encourage him to do it more. He will do it more often. It becomes this positive loop. More motivation, more running. More running, getting better, more motivation. It's a negative loop. I run, I put in all my effort, I suck, so I feel less motivation. I run less, so I don't get any better. I feel less motivation. And then when I run against those who are pretty good, I am proven correct. This probably explains why I am so insecure about my running, too. So, what happens? In a year, the kid who got positive feedback gets 50 points added to his feedback, whereas I lose 50 points. All of a sudden, if we count 10 years, that kid's motivation is up by 500 points. Whereas mine is down by 500 points. And as I said, not just the points of motivation. All that motivation has fed him and encouraged him, made him feel internally capable. So that he feels far more capable of running. And so more often he will run. I won't.
Lap 7, 9:44. Heart rate 133. Average pace 10:08.
But imagine, as I just said, that kid who by 20 has 500 points of motivation. 500 points of motivation. Hell yeah, you're going to like to run. I, on the other hand, have negative 500 points. I'm not even at zero. I'm 1,000 points away from that kid. So that when I started at 20, my career in running, whereas the kid was at plus 500, I was at negative 500. It's a miracle I ran at all. And many of you out there probably are the same. You'll be like, yeah, that's me. I hate running. I'm terrible. I don't want to. That's hate. Hate is all of the negative feelings, all of the demotivation. It is the sum total of negativity. You see that? All of a sudden, you can see why I don't get anything out of it. I didn't reason myself into it. As a matter of fact, I tried to reason myself into running. But it seems like eventually I do start to win. And eventually you all can. That should encourage you. Okay. I'm going to try to do Legg because I've still got a few more runs to go. As you can tell, I'm already back from where we started. Okay, so we have finished our run. As you can tell, I'm back in the park. Just finished my 2.25 miles of cool down, and so I think this run was a successful run. I haven't yet checked my heart rate, but I think I didn't go too fast. I think so. And I hope I was able to cover the idea of why I hate running and what does hate mean. Remember, what hate, how I define hate, which is, something that it seems obvious, but we needed to define it. Then the concept of hedonism, pleasure and pain, and the greater pleasure, which is kind of like nirvana, and then ends versus means. And that's just a way of figuring out how we look at pleasure and pain, in that we don't get money for its own sake, but rather because of what it will eventually bring us. Something that will give us pleasure, something that we will do for its sake. And I said that relates to why other runners will run, and they say they like it. I don't. I do not run for pleasure because I don't get pleasure. So ends versus means. Also, then what's so different with other runners? And I tried to explain that many of them will get some sort of positive feedback, something that gives a deeper meaning to their pain, such that many times they'll even go through even deeper pain than I ever would. And that's because for a longer time they're hardwired at their their most primitive self. They're just always thinking about how they're not even thinking. It's like I said, it's lizard brain level. They don't even think. It's not even reasoned. It's just almost like a reflex for them, that more pain, at least in that one area. So let's not think that it applies to other things. They can have quite a messed up life, but be great runners. In that one area, more pain equals more payback, and so they do it. But these are also things that we can use and learn for ourselves. And so next time, I will share with you why I run, or at least what I've arrived at so far. So, until next time, don't forget to challenge yourselves.